Welcome to the Harvard Museum of the Ancient Near East, or HMANE. My name is Peter Manuelian. I serve as director, and I'm delighted to welcome you into the building. We actually started all the way back in 1899, in fact, right over there, when we were loaned a few galleries in the Peabody Museum. But then David Gordon Lyon, our founder, raised the money to build the building that we're now heading towards. This is the current home of our museum and also the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations, the Center for Jewish Studies, the El Walid Center for Islamic Studies, and of course our collections. The museum was originally built for the study of all of the Semitic language families from the ancient Near East. So Assyrians, Babylonians, Israelites, Moabites, Philistines, Egyptians, all of them. And we try to offer samplings of all of the cultures that we came in contact with through excavations and other means too. Join me for a look at some of my favorite pieces inside. We're open most days. Check our website for hours, usually 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and admission is free. We have 3 galleries, one on each of 3 floors, and this one is a special show called Mediterranean Marketplaces. It's designed to show the interconnectedness of the ancient Mediterranean world, the globalization, if you will. So we have objects from many different cultures and many different time periods. What other museum exhibition could you go to that would have ancient Roman glass over here, Egyptian statuettes over there, and even a Coke bottle with Arabic on the outside of it, or bottles of wine, for example. We have a first millennium reproduction of a house from ancient Israel here, and with some of our interactive displays, you can touch the screen to learn more about any of the objects that you see behind me. Across the way, we have a reproduction of a shipwreck. This is a modern case that's trying to give you a cutaway view of the hold of this particular vessel that was found sunken at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea off the Sinai coast. This is a 1999 discovery, an amazing find by our archaeologists. And we're trying to show the hold of the ship. And so you see the amphorae, the vessels that were in the hold at the time it went down. Even some of the barnacles that were growing on them are still in place. A Middle Kingdom boat from ancient Egypt is here, and you can see the little coarsely carved wooden figures that would handle the oars and the sails and things. There are many of these from the site of Deir el-Bersha. With technology, we try to enhance the collections and educate, inform, and delight. So for example, we have these 3D printed reproductions of objects that are in this gallery, and you could simply take one and put it on the little box, and here's what the museum in the box does.
I'm sure that you noticed this Egyptian replica is incomplete. Although the statuette is missing its head, it clearly shows a barefooted male in a long skirt, stripped to the waist with his wrists bound behind him.
And if English is not your thing, how about Spanish?
Seguro que se ha dado cuenta de que esta réplica egipcia está incompleta. Aunque a la estatuilla le falta la cabeza, muestra claramente a un varón descalzo con una falda larga.
You'll see on the walls as you move from floor 1 to floor 2, photographs of the Giza excavations run by the Harvard University Boston Museum of Fine Arts expedition. What is this golden throne doing in this gallery? Well, the year is 1925, and the Harvard University Boston Museum of Fine Arts expedition is working at Giza on the east side of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. The director, George Reisner, is back here at Harvard teaching, but the team comes upon a mysterious burial shaft. It goes down and down and down, 30 meters, 90 feet underground, and ends in a deteriorated burial chamber. Very small room, very unfinished. They realize the only way to reconstruct what's going on here is to lie on mattresses, pick up every tiny little fragment, take lots of photos, give everything a number, make lots of drawings. And it turns out to be the secret burial place, or we think the burial place, of Queen Hetepheres, the mother of Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid. The furniture was able to be reconstructed, a bed canopy, a bed, a carrying chair, a curtain box, a simple chair, but there was a very complicated second chair, and no one knew what it should look like until 1949, when Reisner's assistant, Bill Smith, put together some archaeological drawings. We took that and ran with it. We made a computer model of this chair and then put it all together and fabricated the actual thing using computer carving tools, a CNC router machine, real gilding, and real faience tiles to put the whole thing together into this display. It has falcon arms, it has images of the goddess Neith, and all kinds of other symbolic motifs here, along with the faience inlays, in what was a very suitable piece of royal furniture for Queen Hedda Paris. This is a modern reproduction of an ancient stela. It's called the Dream Stela of Thutmose IV. Now, it still stands, the original granite stela, between the front legs of the Great Sphinx at Giza, and it dates to 1,000 years later than the Sphinx. The Sphinx is Dynasty 4, think about 2400, 2500 BCE, and Dynasty 18 is the date 1,000 years later for this one. Now, young Prince Thutmose IV is a prince. He loves to tool around the Giza pyramids. He takes a nap one day, and the Sphinx appears to him in a dream and basically says, "I am covered in sand. If you will dig me out, I will make you pharaoh." And he did, and he did. How do we know all this? That's what the hieroglyphs tell us here. So Thutmose IV becomes king. He takes a block of stone, probably from Khafre's pyramid complex, and he inscribes the stela and puts it between the front legs of the Sphinx. A propagandistic tale, did it ever happen? Who knows, but it certainly bolsters the legitimacy of the king. And we see Thutmose IV here making offerings to the Sphinx, and in another illustration, the same thing happening right here. And then the main part of the text in hieroglyphs, beginning here with a date, and then continuing across. And with our app, you can actually aim your phone or your iPad at the stela and get a line-by-line translation of the text telling us this amazing story. This is a mummy container of Padimut, who was an official, a priest, and a metal engraver at Thebes, ancient Thebes, modern Luxor, several hundred miles south of Cairo. And this is a unique item in the collection. It's made of cartonnage, so layers of linen, and then covered in plaster and carved. If you look very closely, you can see that the figures and inscriptions are raised. They're in raised relief above the rest of the plaster area. Very rare, only a few other mummy containers have this kind of decoration technique. And there are wonderful scenes of the god Anubis, the jackal-headed god, taking care of the mummy of Padimut, and then as he is weighed against a feather of Ma'at, or truth, he is found to be justified, and he's led into the company of Re Harakti, these back-to-back images of the falcon-headed god with the sun disk above. Wonderful scenes, wonderful decoration, various deities and inscriptions all over. And then uniquely on the bottom of the container is a figure of the deified king Amenhotep I. This is Dynasty 22, the third intermediate period for Padimut, so about 940 BCE or so. Amenhotep I goes all the way back to the 18th dynasty. So he's a patron deity or patron king of the cemetery where Padimut was buried. Amenhotep I also appears on the bottom of the foot of the container. All in all, quite a masterpiece and a treasure of the museum. Egyptology is the scholarly study of ancient Egypt. Egyptomania is our fascination with this ancient culture in popular works. So maybe you recognize some of these pieces, whether it's perfume bottles or laundry detergent or magazine advertisements or Lego pieces or cigarette boxes. We see ancient Egyptian motifs all over the place in Western civilization. It's part of our fascination with the culture. And in this case, we've given a sample of some of these objects that may strike close to home or maybe look exotic and different and adventurous. Either way, Egyptomania is all around us. This piece is a canopic jar. Canopic jars usually come in fours, and they were meant to hold the internal organs of the deceased, the liver, lungs, intestine, and stomach. This one belonged to Usarhat, the overseer of the fields of Amun. He was not a king, but he had a king's tomb. This one comes from KV45, a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Usarhat was not a king, but nevertheless, he was one of the special few who had a tomb in this precious location. This is Dynasty 18, so think about 1400 BCE or so. It's limestone, and it has the formula here and also the name and titles of Usarhat, and the face is carved in this beautiful 18th dynasty style. 3 of these jars were found by Howard Carter, the man who discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922, but these come much earlier in 1902, and the 4th one was found only in 2006 in a neighboring tomb in the Valley of the Kings. About 940 BCE or so, this coffin was made, and also the other one in this gallery. This one belongs to a man, Ankh Khonsu, and perhaps his spouse, Mut-ii, is the owner of the other one. This is made in the 22nd dynasty, so the 3rd intermediate period. Think about 940 BCE or so, and it's made of sycamore fig wood. Beautiful painted decorations, large hieroglyphs around the side listing Ankh Khonsu's titles and other types of spells. We have one down the center part of the coffin as well. And a great surprise greeted us recently when we lifted the lid during conservation and 3D scanning and photography efforts. We lifted the lid and found, to our surprise, a beautiful image of the falcon-headed sun god Re-Harakti painted on the interior bottom of the box of the coffin. With computer software, we can enhance it because it's a little bit obscured by the sacred oils that were poured over it, perhaps during the burial process. Altogether, these 2 pieces come from Thebes. They were given to the museum. They had no human remains inside, no bodies by the time they got to America, but they are treasures of the collection. One of my favorite pieces in the gallery is this throne of King Tutankhamun. It's not an antiquity. It was made by a talented Egyptian craftsman in 1929 when an American tourist came to Cairo and commissioned not 1, but 2 of them. It's an amazing reproduction, very, very faithful to the original gilded throne of Tutankhamun, which is on display in Cairo today. This one is made of teak wood with mother of pearl and ivory inlays and shows every last detail of the original, right down to the hieroglyphic inscriptions, which give the early name of Tutankhamun and the later name of Tutankhamun, because he lived at a very tumultuous time in the 18th dynasty when Egyptian religion had been turned on its head and had to be brought back to normalcy or orthodoxy. So wonderful details here. You see the sun's disk at the back with the rays coming down, emanating in human hands, blessing the royal couple, Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun, his queen. We have the king's names in cartouches or oval rings. We have lions here and lion legs. And even down below, we have this latticework bracing, which has a motif for the symbolic unification of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, the 2 halves of the country. Altogether, an amazing piece, historical one, a reproduction of an antiquity, and of the finest craftsmanship from the first half of the 20th century. This triad is a royal statue. It's a modern replica. The original is in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, across the Charles River, but it shows King Menkaure, the builder of the 3rd and smallest pyramid at Giza, and then seated in the middle is the goddess Hathor with her cow's horns and sun disk, and on the other side is a nome or provincial deity or goddess. This one belongs to the hare or rabbit nome in Upper Egypt, where the site of Deir el-Bersha is located. There are inscriptions on the base that give Menkaure's name and an oval ring or a cartouche and lists various types of offerings. This was one of many, many triads that was found in the Valley Temple of King Menkaure at the end of a long causeway leading eastwards from his pyramid. It was found in 1908 along with 3 others in perfect condition by Oric Bates, working for George Reisner. Oric Bates was a Bostonian archaeologist who became the African archaeology curator at the Peabody Museum across the street here. Bates found these during the excavations, and there were wonderful dig shots, and he sent a cable home to the MFA authorities talking about this find. Originally, 2 triads came to Boston and 2 stayed in the Cairo Museum. But later there was a switch. Why? Because Reisner found the famous dyad or pair statue, a much larger statue of Menkaure and perhaps a queen or a goddess or even his mother. And that came to Boston. It's a long story, in exchange for sending one of the triads back. So 3 triads in Cairo now, just 1 in Boston, and here is a reproduction. Why do we have a reproduction? Because during World War II, there was fear in Boston of German bombing raids. And so some of the greatest Egyptian masterpieces were reproduced in plaster casts and put on display, while the originals were secreted off to the western part of Massachusetts. This sandstone relief comes from the 4th pylon, or massive gateway, at Karnak, the great temple of Amun, or Amun-Re, located south of Cairo, several hundred miles south, in modern Luxor, or ancient Thebes, on the east bank of the Nile. It shows the great king Ramses II from dynasty 19, so think about 1270 BCE or so, and he's in the company of the goddess Ra-Tawi. Her name is above her head, and her sun disk, and her cow's horns. Ramses is identified by these 2 oval rings, or cartouches, above his name. And the whole thing is carved in sunk relief. It's recessed into the sandstone. And these massive figures, also inscribed on the sides, would have been part of many, many such offering scenes that adorned the 4th pylon at Karnak Temple. A selection of different types of Egyptian objects here. We have a limestone flake with a sketch scene on it of the god Osiris. We have a palette for grinding coal. We have a funerary figurine and faience, and a block statue with the inscription of the owner here, and also a funerary cone. This is something that would be inscribed or set into the architrave over New Kingdom tomb chapels. But this is the interesting one. This is a first intermediate period stela, so think about 2000 BCE or so, belonging to a man named Itu-Ernehe. And right off, you can see it's got a kind of coarse, provincial sort of look. This is the way Egyptian art appeared when the country fragmented. So after the end of the Old Kingdom or Pyramid Age, you got this kind of provincial-looking art. Hieroglyphs a little bit unevenly spaced, big faces, not so sophisticated in the carving. But the interesting history here is the modern history. George Reisner was excavating at a site called Naga Adair in Upper Egypt, and he was at this site for many, many years. But his professor, the founder of this museum, David Gordon Lyon, came out to visit Reisner at one point. And after the visit, he went to Cairo to try to acquire objects. You could buy them in antiquities dealer shops in those days legally. And he went to one dealer shop, and the dealer said, "I have this stela from the excavations of George Reisner." Lyon said, "What? How is this possible?" And he fired off a cablegram up the Nile to Reisner at Naga Adair and said, "This dealer says he's got one of your pieces." Reisner wrote back and said, "Nonsense, couldn't come from my excavations. Take one of my Egyptological colleagues," because David Gordon Lyon was no Egyptologist. "Take one of my colleagues to the dealer shop and he'll look at it with you and decide whether it's a forgery or what's happening." So they did, and it does turn out to be a genuine piece, and very possibly from the site of Naga Adair that Reisner was excavating, but it probably came out with illicit digging or some of the local Egyptians who had gotten hold of this piece before Reisner was working there. Anyway, Reisner thanked his former professor Lyon for checking up and checking in with him and said, "You're free to do what you would like with it." And so Lyon did purchase the stela, and here it is in our museum today. Here's a recent acquisition. This is a modern oil painting on canvas. It was done by American painter Joseph Lyndon Smith. He was a great friend of George Reisner, director of the Harvard MFA expedition. And this is a scene from this tomb. Reisner was excavating at the Giza pyramids, and on the east side of the Great Pyramid, he found this chapel belonging to a 6th dynasty official named Idu. Here is Idu, set within his false door, and he's magically appearing from the netherworld, arms outstretched to take the offerings, milk and bread and beer and other foodstuffs that we, the living, would bring into his chapel and offer for his spirit. Well, Joe Smith was so enamored by this scene that he decided to paint it in 1925 for Reisner and the expedition, and we were lucky enough to acquire it for the museum recently. Idu is in full color here, something Reisner valued very much because photography back then was mostly black and white. the Assyrian palace reliefs on the third floor of the museum. These are from Nineveh and other places in present-day Iraq. Aim your device at them, they come to life. Assyriologists help us restore the colors. We have animations, we have narration, music, hunting, all kinds of additional features.
Those who oppose the yoke of Ashur cannot stand long against the merciless weapons of God. It is best to submit and enjoy safety within the borders of the king's land.
Many have learned that it is unwise to oppose our Lord, and has commemorated his victories on the carved cannons you see in the palace reception.
And I am sure that you know the flowers remaining from our recent celebrations. It is a shame that you were not more timely in your arrival, so to see the glorious triumph of the king with your own eyes. You see, I understand that you